The phone rang at 3 a.m. Cassie Ventura jolted awake in her hotel room, heart pounding. On the other end, Sean Combs' voice cut through the darkness. "You better answer when I call." This wasn't love. This was control. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away and 15 years earlier, a 14-year-old girl named Sarah stepped off Jeffrey Epstein's private jet, clutching a modeling contract that promised her dreams. She had no idea she was walking into a nightmare. Two predators, two different worlds. One terrifying truth: monsters don't always look like monsters. March 25th, 2024. Federal agents kicked down the doors of Diddy's mansions at dawn. Inside, they found over 1,000 bottles of lubricant, military weapons, and something that made seasoned investigators sick: hard drives containing videos that documented years of systematic abuse. The scene haunted agents who remembered another raid 5 years earlier, when they discovered Jeffrey Epstein's house of horrors, filled with hidden cameras and evidence of a trafficking network that spanned decades. But these weren't random crimes. They were businesses, empires built on human suffering, disguised as entertainment and philanthropy. Sean Combs grew up poor in Harlem, watching his father get murdered when he was just 2 years old. That trauma never left him. It festered, twisted, turned into an insatiable hunger for control. He climbed from the streets to the penthouse, but the scared little boy inside never felt safe. So he created a world where he controlled everything: the music, the money, and eventually, the people. Jeffrey Epstein's childhood was different, but equally damaged. Raised in a middle-class Brooklyn family, he was brilliant, but isolated, gifted with numbers, but hopeless with human connection. He learned early that money could buy anything: attention, respect, even silence. Where Diddy used charm and charisma, Epstein used cold calculation and strategic intelligence. The differences shaped their hunting styles. Diddy was the predator hiding in plain sight, throwing legendary parties where celebrities danced while victims suffered upstairs. His white parties in the Hamptons weren't just social events. They were recruitment operations. Young women desperate for fame would meet the man who could make their dreams come true. They didn't realize he was also the man who could destroy their lives. Epstein operated from the shadows, building a web of influence that reached the highest levels of government and society. He didn't need to be famous. He needed to be indispensable. Presidents called him for advice. Nobel Prize winners attended his dinners. He collected powerful people the way others collect stamps. Each relationship a shield protecting him from consequences. Both men understood the same fundamental truth: find the broken ones first. Diddy targeted young women in the entertainment industry, many coming from difficult backgrounds, all desperate for success. 19-year-old Cassie Ventura thought she was signing a record deal in 2007. She was actually signing away 11 years of her life to a man who would control everything from her career to her daily movements. Epstein's victims were even younger, even more vulnerable. He specifically sought out girls from single-parent homes, financial hardship, family dysfunction. Sarah Kellen was 17 when Epstein's recruiters found her at a Florida mall. They offered her modeling opportunities and educational funding. What they didn't mention was that accepting their help meant entering a world where saying no wasn't an option. The recruitment process revealed their psychological sophistication. Diddy would lavish attention on his targets, making them feel special, chosen, destined for greatness. He'd fly them to exotic locations, introduce them to celebrities, promise them record deals and red carpet moments. By the time they realized the true cost, they were too emotionally invested to walk away. Epstein's approach was more methodical. He studied his victims like a scientist studying specimens, learning their dreams, their fears, their weaknesses. He'd start with legitimate opportunities: academic scholarships, art lessons, mentorship programs. The inappropriate contact began gradually, almost imperceptibly, until victims found themselves trapped in situations they never could have imagined. The control mechanisms both men employed were masterworks of psychological manipulation. Cassie described how Diddy would alternate between extreme affection and sudden cruelty, creating a psychological dependency that felt like addiction. One day, he'd surprise her with a $50,000 shopping spree and tell her she was the love of his life. The next day, he'd threaten to destroy her career and cut off all contact with her family. Epstein's control was more subtle, but equally devastating. He created financial dependency, paying for victims' education, housing, and basic needs, while gradually isolating them from support systems. Victims described feeling like prisoners in gilded cages, unable to leave because they had nowhere to go and no resources to survive independently. Both predators understood that shame was their greatest weapon. They convinced victims that what was happening was somehow their fault, that they had chosen this life, that no one would believe them if they spoke out. This psychological programming was so effective that many victims blamed themselves for years, even decades, after escaping. The enabler networks surrounding both men reveal the institutional rot that allowed their operations to flourish. At Bad Boy Records, employees knew something was wrong, but stayed silent. They needed their jobs. They had families to feed. Speaking out meant career suicide in an industry where Diddy's word could blacklist someone forever. Epstein's network was even more extensive and sophisticated. Flight attendants on his private jet never questioned why he traveled with so many young girls. Housekeepers at his properties cleaned up evidence and never reported what they saw. Most disturbing were the powerful men who witnessed the abuse and said nothing, protecting themselves while abandoning vulnerable children. The technology both men used to document their crimes reveals a chilling level of premeditation. Diddy's mansions were equipped with professional recording equipment and hidden cameras. He didn't just abuse his victims. He created permanent records of their humiliation that could be used for blackmail or personal gratification. Epstein turned his Manhattan mansion into a surveillance fortress with cameras in every room and recording equipment that captured everything. These weren't spontaneous acts of violence. They were calculated intelligence operations designed to gather compromising material on powerful visitors while documenting the systematic abuse of vulnerable girls. The moment everything started falling apart came differently for each man. For Diddy, it was November 16, 2023, when Cassie Ventura filed her federal lawsuit. After 11 years of silence, she found the courage to speak her truth in 35 pages of devastating detail. The lawsuit described systematic abuse, forced participation in degrading acts, and years of psychological torture disguised as a relationship. Diddy's response revealed his desperation. Within 24 hours, faster than any major lawsuit in recent memory, the case was settled for an undisclosed amount. His legal team claimed the settlement didn't indicate guilt, but the speed suggested panic. You don't pay millions of dollars in 24 hours unless you're terrified of what a trial might reveal. For Epstein, the unraveling began with Virginia Roberts Giuffre's refusal to stay silent. Despite years of threats and intimidation, she continued speaking out about her experiences as Epstein's victim. Her persistence eventually forced law enforcement to reopen investigations they had previously closed, leading to Epstein's 2019 arrest and the discovery of evidence that should have put him away for life. The surveillance footage that destroyed Diddy's credibility existed for 8 years before CNN obtained and released it in March 2024. The video showed him attacking Cassie in a Los Angeles hotel hallway in 2016, confirming details from her lawsuit that his lawyers had dismissed as lies. For 8 years, this evidence sat hidden while Diddy continued abusing others and building his public image as a successful entrepreneur. Epstein's protection was even more sophisticated. His 2008 plea deal was a masterclass in legal manipulation that allowed him to serve just 13 months in a private wing of a county jail with work release 6 days a week. The deal was negotiated by future Secretary of Labor Alexander Acosta and required approval from FBI Director Robert Mueller. This wasn't justice. It was institutional capture in action. The psychological profiles reveal fascinating differences between the two predators. Epstein accuser Lisa Phillips, who was aware of Diddy's behavior during her modeling career, provides chilling insight into their contrasting personalities. She describes Diddy as someone who thought he was God, and above all, believing nothing was going to happen to him. His narcissism was loud, public, demanding constant validation. Epstein was different, much smarter, much more highly intelligent, according to Phillips. His narcissism was quieter, but more dangerous. Where Diddy operated as an open secret within the music industry, Epstein ran everything under the table, known only to a select few, who were either complicit or too terrified to speak. This difference in approach reflected their psychological makeup. Diddy was impulsive, emotional, prone to outbursts that revealed his true nature. The hotel surveillance footage shows him in a towel, completely out of control, attacking Cassie with the rage of someone whose carefully constructed image had momentarily cracked. Epstein was calculating, methodical, always thinking 10 steps ahead. He never lost control because control was his religion. Every interaction was planned, every relationship strategically useful, every piece of evidence carefully cataloged for future use. The impact on victims reveals the lasting damage both men inflicted. Cassie's lawsuit describes years of trauma, inability to form healthy relationships, and constant fear of retaliation. She wasn't just physically abused, she was psychologically reconstructed to serve one man's twisted needs. Epstein's victims describe similar devastation. Many struggle with relationships, trust issues, and complex trauma that affects every aspect of their lives. They weren't just exploited, they were robbed of their childhoods, their innocence, their ability to believe that powerful people might actually want to help them. The legal reckonings came with dramatically different outcomes. Epstein died by suicide in federal custody in August 2019, taking his secrets with him and denying his victims the chance to confront him in court. His death felt like a final act of control, a last attempt to avoid accountability, even in his darkest hour. Diddy sits in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn today, denied bail 3 times after federal judges deemed him too dangerous to release. His legal team offered $50 million in bail with home detention and GPS monitoring, but Judge Andrew Carter rejected every proposal. The system that protected him for decades has finally turned against him. The institutional failures that enabled both men reveal systemic problems that extend far beyond individual predators. Media companies dependent on entertainment industry advertising minimized Diddy's allegations for years. Financial firms with ties to Epstein's mysterious wealth sources avoided asking uncomfortable questions about his business activities. Law enforcement agencies that should have investigated earlier chose to look the other way when victims came forward. Prosecutors who should have pursued justice instead negotiated sweetheart deals that prioritized protecting the powerful over serving the vulnerable. The courage of survivors ultimately brought both operations down. Women like Cassie Ventura and Virginia Roberts Giuffre faced character assassination, legal harassment, and physical danger to tell their truths. They knew that speaking out would change their lives forever, but they also knew that staying silent would condemn other women to suffer the same fate. Today, as Diddy's federal trial approaches and over 60 civil lawsuits pile up against him, we're witnessing either the evolution of justice or another elaborate performance designed to protect the powerful while sacrificing a convenient scapegoat. The true test will be whether his enablers face consequences or whether the system once again protects itself by punishing only the most visible perpetrator. The comparison between these two predators forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, wealth, and institutional protection in America. They were products of systems that consistently prioritize protecting the powerful over serving the vulnerable. The only question remaining is whether we've learned enough from their victims' courage to prevent the next generation of monsters from building their own empires of exploitation. The answer will determine whether justice is finally possible, or whether power will always find a way to protect itself, no matter the cost in human suffering.